The Atari Lynx, Atari's foray into handheld gaming. Released in 1989 as a competitor to the Nintendo Game Boy, the Atari Lynx was massively more powerful, massively more expensive, and massively less successful. Now, today I'm going to be looking at the two Atari Lynx Evercade cartridges which have been released recently. However, before that, I think I'll just give a quick little bit of history on the Atari Lynx so you know exactly what you're dealing with here. Now, the Atari Lynx was developed by Epix, a software house with a strong history of working on Commodore and Atari 8-bit computers, and the original hardware design came from many of the people behind the Commodore Amiga's hardware, and it was originally known as the Handy. Now, the Lynx utilised a number of custom processors, as was quite common for Atari hardware at the time. So you had the Mikey custom 8-bit CMOS, which ran at 16 MHz. It had a custom video DMA driver, which drove a 160 by 102 pixel display, which could display 4096 colours up to 16 per scan line. There was also SUSE, another custom CMOS chip, which was this time a 16-bit one at 16 MHz, which allowed for unlimited blitter sprites, hardware scaling and distortion, hardware decompression, and multi-directional scrolling in hardware. Now, the system also came with just 64Ks of RAM, which was a reasonable amount at the time. The game cartridges could hold up to 1 MB of data utilising bank switching, and all this was displayed on a 3.5-inch LCD backlit colour screen, and there was also 4-channel audio available with an 8-bit DAC for each channel. Now, this output in mono on the Model 1 Lynx and in stereo on the Model 2 Lynx. Now, as many of these systems were at the time, such as the Game Gear and the PC Engine GT, battery life was not brilliant, especially for a portable system. On the Model 1 Lynx, six AA batteries would get you between 3 to 4 hours of lifetime, depending on volume, screen brightness, and the Lynx 2 up this slightly from 3 to 4 hours to 4 to 5 hours. So yeah, unlike the Game Boy, this system was hamstrung by its battery usage, and as I mentioned earlier, it was pricey. When it first launched in the United States in 1989, it retailed for $179.99. That's approximately $80 more than you could get a Game Boy for. That was not good. But anyway, enough of the history lesson. Now let's get on to the real meat of today's video, and we'll look at the two cartridges released for the Evercade. So here we are with the Evercade Atari Lynx cartridge number 1, which features the work of Songbird Productions. As you can see, there's a few different titles on here, some of them better known than others. Now, it's quite an interesting mix. You've got some adventure games, some sports games, some puzzle. It's a demo selection even there. But it's a fun little set. You know, it gives you a good variety of genres to try. And there are a few games on here which are quite iconic and recognisable. You know, you've got Dracula on there, which is a very recognisable one. Scrapyard Dog. Now we're going into Scrapyard Dog here. As you can see, it looks pretty good. I mean, you know, for what it is, when you think about it, the Atari Lynx was not a hugely powerful machine, although as a handheld at the time it was, and this looks far better than anything that was being produced by its competitors. You know, you couldn't do something like this on the Game Boy or the Game Gear. Even the PC Engine's portable version wasn't quite up to this. But anyway, as you can see, the Evercade here handles this really well. I mean, you know, you may as well be playing this on an actual Atari Lynx. It's that good. And yes, I'm that terrible at this game. It's basically a side-scrolling platformer type game, and I'm terrible at them. So yeah, as you can see, everything looks good. You get a nice little preview of each game, which is standard for Evercade cartridges. And let's have a look at the demo cartridge now. You know, this is an interesting little bit. I did have a play about with this. I wasn't really sure what everything on here did. There's a bit of a sound tool here for testing out options and things. It's basically, this is a bunch of demos that someone's put together to show what you can do with the Lynx. It's a fun addition to this cartridge, although if it was up to me, I would have actually probably left this off, because it's, I would try to find another game if I could have. Yeah, it's just not as interesting or as exciting as some of the other items on here, because we're here to play the games. But like I said, this cartridge offers a good variety. Overall, to me, this cartridge is probably an 8 out of 10. It's only let down by a couple of bits and pieces. Now, on to cartridge number 2, which is the software from Epix. This is an iconic cartridge. I just saw Blue Lightning, California Games, Chips Challenge, Electro Cop, Gates of Zendikon. These are titles that pretty much anyone, Slime World, hey, yeah, these are titles that anyone who had a Lynx or knew someone who had a Lynx would be very familiar with. Every Lynx owner had Blue Lightning. It was a showcase for the Atari Lynx itself, and I actually think on this cartridge it's a showcase for how well the Evercade handles the emulation of this system, because from my memory, I had a friend who had a Lynx. This is pretty much perfect. It's accurate. It's it does everything that the Lynx was built to do. Sprite scaling, yeah, we got that. Some funky effects, yep, it's all there. This is all being done in sprites. Everything's being handled in sprite work. This is, to be honest, the sprite work going on here is probably better than most of the actual home consoles could manage at the time. But this is a brilliant showcase, not just for the Lynx but for the Evercade, because whilst you may get more well-known titles on some of the other Evercade cartridges, for me this cartridge and the Atari Lynx #1 cartridge showcase a system which for many gamers may be somewhat forgotten in the modern world. The Lynx wasn't a huge success. Its games are not necessarily that well known outside of more hardcore collectors, and this is the best way you will ever get to try these games out. Emulation on a PC just doesn't cut it. The screen's too big. It was designed as a handheld. The games were designed around that form factor. This is the best way to experience the Atari Lynx without spending an absolute ton of money on an actual Atari Lynx, because they are expensive and the games are expensive. So this is what I would recommend to people. Want to experience the best of the Atari Lynx, probably the best handheld console of its generation in terms of technical ability? Get the Evercade Atari Lynx cartridges. It cost me $14.99 each cartridge. I actually purchased them from a bricks and mortar store. I went into Game and bought them. I know, Game, we all know people don't like them, but you know what, they're a brick and mortar store, and the more of them there are, the better. And yeah, this is how you should experience it. The games are fun. This is another one. I'm terrible at shoot 'em ups, worse at shoot 'em ups generally than I am at platform games. Yet even I can play this. Even I can do well on Gates of Zendikon. And yeah, it cost me £30, like I said, for the 2 cartridges. That would probably barely buy me an actual Atari Lynx cartridge on eBay these days. But anyway, there you go. The Atari Lynx cartridges for the Evercade. Overall, like I said, cartridge 1's probably an 8 out of 10. Cartridge 2 for me is a definite 10 out of 10. Buy them. They're brilliant. Also, I'd like to thank you for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please do hit like and subscribe. And yeah, watch more of my content. Until next time, this is Rob saying so long.